Diabetes Connections is brought to you by OneTouch. Every touch is a step forward. By Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes and live life to the fullest with Dexcom. And by No Foods. No grain, no gluten, no guilt.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, the Dexcom G6 1 month later, checking back in with company CEO Kevin Sayer.
We believe with the Gen 6 system, because of the increased reliability, because people will be more compliant, we think they don't have to calibrate as much. We'll get better outcomes from the insurance companies. We think we can improve and increase access. And it's literally a circle where we work on all four of those things at the same time and pull whichever lever we can to make things better for all of our constituents, again, as I said, including our business.
Sayer answers your questions on everything from the process of moving customers to the G6 to integration with Fitbit and even recycling those inserters. Our community connection this week focuses on Previously Healthy. It's a multimedia story aiming to put a spotlight on the death of a North Carolina toddler. Her family then pushed legislation called Reegan's Rule.
The more that we share those warning signs, the higher the likelihood that a diagnosis is caught in time, that we don't have a tragic death like Reegan.
My talk with Michelle Boise about this project from Beyond Type 1 that's making waves. And in our Know Better segment, another insulin company decides to get into the encapsulation market. We'll talk about Novo Nordisk's new plans. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of the show. So glad to have you along. As always, we aim to educate and inspire about type 1 diabetes by sharing stories of connection. My son was diagnosed more than 11 years ago with type 1 diabetes just before he turned 2. My husband has type 2 diabetes, and I don't have any diabetes, but I do have a background in broadcasting. Spent 20 plus years as a radio and television news reporter and anchor. And that's how you get the podcast. There is so much going on right now in our community. I feel like we're heading into summer with, news releases and product releases and reviews and blogger summits. So I'm going to do the best I can to keep up on that here. There is a lot of information in the show. Had the chance to talk to Kevin Sayer again, as we did last week in March was when the G6 was approved. And we were able to jump on the phone with him and do a very fast-paced interview with lots of questions. This is basically a similarly formatted interview where they gave me about 20 minutes and I tried to bang through as many questions as I could, and some really good information here, and I think some new stuff as well. I also want to make sure you know that, they did include us in that first shipment. So we have had the G6 as you listen here for almost a month now. It was 3 weeks when we did the interview, but by the time this airs, we did not receive the product for free. Benny's endocrinologist wrote the prescription. Our insurance covers the G6, and we'll pay just like we have for all of our Dexcom and other devices. I did have a prior agreement with Animas that included some trade in product. If you're a longtime listener, you likely remember that. But as of right now, we have no agreement beyond podcast sponsorship for any technology. So in other words, we pay for everything that Benny uses. And if we get product for free, whether it's to review or to use, I will let you know. I will spell it out. It's very important to me. And I think that disclosure is something, that kind of disclosure is something that every blogger and podcaster in healthcare, and really everywhere needs to do. It's not hard. You guys are smart. You know the deal. So let's just make sure that's all out in the open. I should also mention that many of the questions that I asked Kevin Sayer came from the Facebook group. I'm very excited with how this group is going. It's become a great little community. It's free. Do I have to say that? It's a free Facebook group, and I'm not selling anything there, but you can join. It's Diabetes Connections, the group, and I link it up every week in the show notes. I'd love to see you join me there. So definitely check that out. It's becoming a kind of a go-to when I have interviews that I'm asking for listener questions and I'm asking for opinions, things like that. So I'd love to have more and more voices in there because it really has become a nice way to get your direct feedback. So please check out the Facebook group. And after the interview with Kevin Sayre, I'm going to pop back on and just say a couple of things, reviewing the G6 a little bit more and some comments about the interview itself as well. Get to that in just a minute. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by OneTouch. Last year, the OneTouch team launched the SmallVictories Campaign, which aimed to recognize the small but significant accomplishments of those with diabetes. OneTouch celebrated individuals for their efforts and encouraged the community to join the movement. Do you or someone you know use the OneTouch VarioFlex meter? Nominate yourself or a loved one today for the SmallVictories Campaign by emailing onetouch@hellommc.com. That's onetouch@hellommc.com. And I will put that email in the show notes as well, because you're probably driving right now and it's kind of difficult to write stuff down, but it'll be there for you. I'm joined again this week by Dexcom CEO Kevin Sayre. As I mentioned earlier, the first shipment of the new G6 system went out about a month ago now, and Benny was included in that first batch. We are on sensor number 3 at the time of this interview. I'm excited to find out more from the man in charge. Kevin, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we last talked in March when the announcement came that the G6 system was approved and would be shipping. Before we talk about many of the details of the system, how are the shipping plans going? Obviously, a first batch went out to some bloggers and some other people involved in the community. When is the next batch ready to go out, or are we just continuing to ship now?
What we've done so far is we did a relatively limited launch of about 1,000 patients to start, and we initiated that launch in April, and it's going on into May. As you said earlier, you guys are on sensor number 3 now. Early June right now is what we have targeted for launch to the general public and for people who have placed orders on a large scale. To the extent that we're scaled up and our inventory quantities are ready to go, we would accelerate that, but we have always shot for early June, and right now we're on target for that as far as getting enough product built to cover everything. So far, so good.
How does it work in terms of upgrading or updating? You know, many people are still using the G4, let alone the G5.
We have an upgrade program in place for our patients. If somebody is an in-warranty patient and they are purchasing, for example, if you purchase 2 G5 transmitters now because G6 is not here, after you use your first G5 transmitter, when you go to the second one, we replace that G5 transmitter with a G6 transmitter, and you can upgrade on up to G6 with no trouble. Our upgrade program is outlined on our website and certainly can be better explained by our customer service people than it is for me. We try and be fair with everybody when we do this, as fair as we possibly can. One of the reasons we do have a 3-month life transmitter, aside from not making it too big with the battery lasting longer, is the fact that we can upgrade it easier, because when transmitters lasted a year, patients were making investments that is pretty tough. So we think we've offered the best solution we can for our patients, and we're working with them. If your patient is out of warranty and needs to order a new product or a new system, they'll, once we're in G6 launch mode, they can order G6 and get it as soon as we can possibly ship. If they want to order G5 now and not wait for the G6 launch, they can order G5 and we can put them into the upgrade program.
I'm going to revisit that, the different models in just a moment. But let's talk about the G6 system itself. Quick review from Benny, and we did a couple of Facebook Lives on this. He said it's the inserter is his new favorite thing about it. Loves it. You don't need me to tell you that it's much different. It feels different. He one of the 3 sensors he said it was kind of like a pop. The other 2, he said he didn't feel at all, which is pretty shocking after 11 years of diabetes devices on this kid's body. Yeah. No finger sticks. We did not do one finger stick with the second sensor. I really tried to trust I tried to trust everything. And I was curious, is that what you're hearing from people, or is the feedback kind of like us where we trust it, but we wanted to verify here and there, but we're trying to trust it? What are you hearing?
We are hearing exactly what you said. We purposely made the system to whereby our patients, if they chose to calibrate it, they could. And if they want to take some time to develop some trust with it, they can. I firmly believe, based on all the data I've seen and what I've read in my own experience, the system's adequate when you don't calibrate it. But again, if you're the parent of a child and you're trusting that device to manage your child's diabetes, you want to make absolutely sure that the child's safe with the technology. Make sure that it's safe. So we are hearing wonderful feedback on the no calibration feature, that people are like that. They don't like, for example, when they put the sensor on and have the 2-hour warm-up. If somebody put their sensor on at 11 o'clock at night and went to bed, we don't wake you up and say calibrate it anymore. That was one of the direct comments that we heard. On the other hand, we've heard from some patients, just to get the feel of it and get to know it, I'm going to check it a little bit. But those who have not calibrated have given us the same positive reviews as well.
Yeah, and to be clear, we actually haven't calibrated at all. I just did a finger stick.
You just check it.
Just to to confirm it once or twice.
Okay.
Yeah, so we haven't calibrated at all. And he's 13 now, so he quite enjoys, not having to finger stick. It's good incentive to put that on. I did get a question in my Facebook group about that. And Angela asked, since this is now designed to be a primary blood glucose information source, would you consider a grace period like Omnipod instead of a hard shutoff? This may be an issue for people in the workplace and kids in school. I know the system just came out. I know you're used to getting constructive criticism right away. Any plans for something like that?
Not today. The shutoff is a function of the FDA's special controls on the system. And what the FDA told us very clearly is the device has to shut off after the end of its labeled clinically approved life. And so we do shut it off at 10 days. Now, we give warnings. Your sensor is going to shut off in X hours, and we can be more visible in the warnings in the app over time if people want, louder alarms and louder alerts that your sensor is going to be done. It's kind of difficult to balance, but the 10-day shutoff is here to stay.
On that line, a couple of prominent bloggers, Mike Hoskins from Diabetes Mind, Carrie Sparling from 6 Until Me, posted their experiences basically trying to, extend the life of the G6 as you can do, as you know, with the G4 and the G5. Doesn't seem to be possible. And one of the questions that came up was, it seems to be sensor transmitter design. You can't really take the transmitter off without taking the sensor off. Is that the way it's built? There's not supposed to be a way to, and I always feel kind of funny, to be honest, asking the CEO of the company how to game the system. But
you know what? Even if I knew the answer to that, I wouldn't tell you. The system is designed to shut off at 10 days, and we've designed it that way and met the FDA's criteria for that. And that's all I'll go there.
I appreciate your frankness in that. Back to the question about the grace period. It brings up a question that I have about the Follow app. I wonder if there is a way to perhaps add a few features to the Follow app that would be accessible only to parents. In other words, if your child's a minor, or there's a switch on the share where they could say caretaker, click, then you would get more information on the Follow app because, you never got calibration alerts on the G5 Follow app. You don't get warnings. You don't get things like that on the Follow app. I wonder if there's any consideration for changing and putting more information there.
You know what? Of all of our apps, of our library of products and things we offer patients, Follow's now the oldest. And that is in the middle of a facelift right now. But I can take your input. In fact, if you'd send me an email of some of the things you like in Follow, that would be easier for me to pass on to my engineers than for me to walk over there. So that'd be very much appreciated.
I would be happy to. No, really, thanks so much, because, when you have a 9-year-old, which is when Benny started, it's a little different. He's 13, so it's funny. You'd think, well, the 13-year-old is more independent, and that's true, but the 13-year-old is also more forgetful and also is not inclined to say, oh, yeah, I'll tell my mom that this is popping up on my phone. So I'll send you an email. Thanks so much for that.
Send me an email, absolutely.
All right, I'm
happy to do it.
Let's go back to the upgrade. There are many folks like me who are very excited to go to the G6. We rarely got more time out of the G5 than was FDA approved just because of skin issues and stuff like that. But there are a lot of concerns about cost, of course, in the diabetes and the healthcare community these days. And a lot of people have said to me, I want to stay on the G4. I want to stay on the G5. What's the timeline here?
You know what? We'll keep those systems going for a while. And we really haven't disclosed a formal timeline as to when we'll stop supporting those products. We certainly have to keep supporting them with those who have integrated G4 and G5 systems with their insulin pumps.
Yeah.
So they're not going away. We believe the features of the G6 will outweigh those concerns, and we believe over time, as we creatively work with the payer community, we can come up with models that will put people in a position to whereby this thing can be certainly not cost prohibitive to them. CGM has never been inexpensive for patients. I would love it to be less expensive, believe me. I would, and we're working on making cost is one of the big issues we look at as we design new product. That's one of the 4 pillars they have to address. It has to be less expensive to build than the previous one. To the extent we can take cost out of the model and still treat our business fairly, we do. I think you'll see over time this will all equal out. I guess I'll look at it another way, and I don't want to sound like a company crybaby, but I will for a minute anyway, because we've talked before. With the insurance companies, we're reimbursed for a 7-day sensor at a price for 7 days, okay? When a patient wears that 14 days, we don't get paid for the other 7. And not that we deserve it, but I assure you if it breaks in those second 7 days, somebody calls us, and we have to answer the phone, and that, again, costs us money. And so there is a balance here to all of this, and making the best model for all 4 of our constituents, our company, our patients, our health caregivers, and the people that pay for it, is the balance that we try to achieve. We believe with the Gen 6 system, because of the increased reliability, because people will be more compliant, we think they don't have to calibrate as much. We'll get better outcomes from the insurance companies. We think we can improve and increase access. And it's literally a circle where we work on all 4 of those things at the same time and pull whichever lever we can to make things better for all of our constituents, again, as I said, including our business. I understand patients' concerns. I mean, I've been in offices where the myths of long-lasting sensors are the first thing I hear from the staff there at the office. But to have the system we have, to have no calibrations, to have what we have with G6, these are the controls that the FDA demanded. And we've heard from patients forever, no calibrations is a big, big thing for them. And I would tell you for the large percentage of our patients, that is the very biggest thing. We'll work on those cost issues, Stacey. I've never been bashful internally about telling our guys to take costs out of the system, and we've never been bashful in going to the insurance companies with creative pricing proposals if, in fact, they will increase access to patients and make it easier. But it's all a trade-off.
Let's continue this and just ask, if I could, any update on Medicare in terms of, if people are not familiar with this issue, I'll put a link in the show notes, but Medicare will pay for the Dexcom, which is wonderful, but they won't if you use the share with it at the current time. I know you've been pushing to change that. Any progress to report?
Yes, there's a bunch of activity going on in Washington, D.C. amongst the various government officials. Letters have been sent from Congress to the CMS group saying, resolve this. Our political efforts have been very strong and have gone very well. We are hopeful we have a solution. What I have told our team internally and what I would say on the outside, if we can't get by this, we have to figure out inside a product configuration that will please them. I don't want to have to go make a new product for Medicare, but if we have to, we will. The share feature for Medicare patients is absolutely critical. When you think of somebody, particularly somebody living alone, battling diabetes and being an insulin dependent, having their caregivers or their loved ones being able to watch their data from afar, it's the reason you get CGM, or it's certainly one of the top 3, and we need to resolve it. We're working diligently there. We've expended great resources trying to get where we need to get, and we're hopeful this will be resolved here in the summer. But you know what? It's hard to predict. It's just hard.
Yeah. Couple of rapid fire updates, if you don't mind. I got a press release from the folks at Fitbit. And boy, has that news been out there for a little while, kind of saying we're going to work with Dexcom. So the press release was talking about how second half of 2018, they expect to have, and they say via the Dexcom app, they say glucose data will be relayed from the Dexcom CGM to the wrist, making it easier for users to see their Dexcom CGM data, blah, 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 with Fitbit, Ionic, and Versa. Couple of questions on that. Is it the G5? Is it the G6? And do you need a phone?
To start, the apps will work through the phone the same way the Apple Watch does. There will come a time when the Fitbit devices will be configured similar to the new Apple Watch version 3, and we'll be able to go directly to the piece. With the original G6, we can't go directly to the watch, but we have a new electronics configuration coming before the end of the year. And while it will look very similar on the outside and behave very similar in the app, the horsepower of this new electronics configuration is mind-boggling. And then we would be able to configure that system to go directly to a watch, and first would be the Apple Watch, but we would do the same with Fitbit. So theoretically, for a patient, if you don't want to carry a phone or a receiver, there will be a day when you can wear the watch as your primary device and go from there and have all the features of Share through the cellular connectivity of those wearables. So give people glucose where they want it. And when I have sensors on, I'm pretty candid. My favorite place to look at it's on my Apple Watch. I think our app on the Apple Watch is by far and away, I'm very biased here, but I think it's the most useful app on the Apple Watch I've encountered. I think it's a wonderful patient interface for those who can use it. But one of the reasons to go to Fitbit, again, as we look at this landscape, we not only need to offer more choices, we need to offer patients the choice that they can afford and offer them enough. The Apple Watch with cell connectivity, I think it's $400. I think the Fitbit pieces ultimately over time are a little bit less expensive. Again, more choice. When Fitbit purchased the guys who made the Pebble Watch, the technology of the Pebble Watch, the loudest community of Pebble users were Dexcom CGM wearers.
We have 3, and they're like dinosaurs now. And
so I think if we can give people data where they want it, where they can use it, that's our mission, that's our goal.
And Kevin, I'm sorry, I missed when you answered the part. I'm sure you did. Will that new straight from Dexcom to Apple Watch, straight to Fitbit, no phone, is that G6 or is that another iteration?
It'll be a configuration of G6. It'll be a different electronics configuration of the transmitter. And then there'll be some new software, but we're working on it.
I'm going to try to get you to comment sideways on one of these other companies that you work with. You have a lot of partners. And I'm curious if I could ask you about Tandem, because their predictive low glucose suspend system is in front of the FDA right now. It hopefully will be launched by the end of summer. That's what Tandem is hoping. And it uses the G5. So if you're not familiar, this is, of course, the system where the CGM says, hey, you're going low. It tells the pump, slow down on the insulin, and it looks great in the studies that have been out. There is a deep rumor, I have to say it's not, I have no facts, I have no source on this, that Tandem is going to ask to try this with the G6. They're going to ask the FDA to skip this ahead. Can you talk about that at all? Is Tandem going to move forward with the G6 with the predictive low glucose?
I can't speak for Tandem, but I can speak for the industry and where we're headed. And I can tell you one thing about the Tandem pump and the Tandem platform that really excites our company. They've made their pump to whereby you can plug a cable into it and upgrade the operating system. So if they come with G5 and then it gets approved with G6 shortly thereafter, you'll be able to plug it into your computer and download the G6 software and run it on that same device. You're not stuck with G5 for the next 4 years while you have that pump under its warranty period. Tandem was very thoughtful in developing their operating system and the configuration of their product. With respect to running G6, when the FDA approved G6, they created a category of products, brand new category called iCGM, and that's interoperable, integrated continuous glucose monitoring. They have very, very direct paths for patients to work with for companies to work with our system that are not as difficult as they were before. And I think Tandem certainly has an opportunity to take advantage of the different requirements established by the FDA and move faster to G6 than they ever could have in the past. I can't speak as to whether they're going to come out with G6 or G5, but I know G6 will not be long. And look, I would hope that that's what they can offer patients out of the get-go, because that's what patients will want.
That would be amazing. No finger stick and then a predictive low glucose. If I had diabetes too, life-changing. Okay, in the time we have left, 2 complaints about the G6. I'll give you them both at once, and we'll go from there. My complaints about the G6, that inserter is fabulous, but man, it's a lot of plastic. We've talked about recycling before. Any movement forward on that one? And then the second question is, the lost signal. I feel like we lost signal more once it switched to Bluetooth. When we went to G5 from G4, I was hoping that would change with the G6. It seems about the same. It's not that bad for us, but it is a question of magically moving the phone to the right place at night.
I chuckle at the signal loss, but only because I can tell you an anecdote. I was on the phone with the COO of Apple as we talk about our watch things. We have a good relationship with Apple, and I was complaining about Bluetooth connectivity, and he said, take a number and get in line. He said, we try to make it perfect, and all the devices we talk to, and everything, there's just a bunch of variables, and there's even variables phone to phone. It is similar to G5. One of my big initiatives here is better connectivity. I think patients deserve connectivity all the time. And so when I wear a sensor and connectivity is bad, trust me, they hear from me. And then we go look at the database. One of the reasons to do the launch of the first 1,000 patients was in essence to test how connectivity was working and how things were going. And I have not reviewed anything. We've done surveys and those results are coming in from the first users. Connectivity is something we will address more over time, and yes, it's something we can improve. I agree with you 100%. With respect to the plastic, I can tell you two things. Number one, all that plastic, as elegant it is, actually isn't a whole lot more from a cost perspective. It isn't more from a cost perspective than what we shipped you before. And you look at it, and my first thought was, shouldn't we be reusing this thing? But there's a needle in it, and a needle that goes into your skin, and we have to create a great patient experience. Over time, we will come up with some kind of recycling program. We got this approval so quickly with the FDA in March for a launch we were planning on later in the fall that I think we just need to get the product out and get our inventory built, make sure we get this thing where we want it to be and get the positive comments we need, and then we'll deal with things like recycling. And connectivity is something we'll look at for future issues and future releases. And I know they have plans. And we'll make it better.
In Charlotte, there seems to be, I don't know if it's a pilot program or if it's anything official. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. But more and more people who have children diagnosed seem to be leaving the hospital with a Dexcom, which is much earlier, than in years past. I'm curious if you know about this and your thoughts on people being diagnosed and immediately going on CGM, which I know as the CEO of Dexcom you've got to like. But at the same time, if you're satisfied with the level of education.
One of the early feedbacks on G6 has been how easy it is to get going on it versus what we've had in the past. The insertion becomes so easy and putting the transmitter in becomes so easy. Then the education really is more around the numbers and what to do with the information. I'll be honest with you, I don't understand how anybody could manage this disease without it. And we have programs like that around the country where at diagnosis, kids are going to CGM first and adults. Look, here's a CGM. Let you learn about your disease and your condition and what is going on with your body, because there is no better way to learn than to be on a sensor all the time. And we do have pilot programs. We have pilot studies where we look at the outcomes and how the patients do. I think CGM first and upfront is an absolute must. If it were up to me, it would be part of the protocol for everybody. And I don't think people are overwhelmed with the data. I think what they're overwhelmed with is not knowing anything. And what CGM gives them is the information to know exactly what they and their loved ones are going through so they can begin to manage and comprehend the disease and then determine what kind of insulin delivery regime they need, what kind of insulin, what kind of dosing they need to take. And they can give their physician actual real information as to what's going on in a day. I can't imagine not treating it that way. I can't. So whoever's doing that in Charlotte, fantastic.
Well, Kevin Sayre, thank you so much for spending some time with me. I know you got to go, but I appreciate it. I'll send you that email, and I know we'll talk again soon.
Send me an email.
Great.
Thank you very much, Stacey. It's great talking to you again.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
More information on the G6 at diabetes-connections.com and in the show notes. And I'm very interested to send that email over to Kevin Sayer. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to post that in the Facebook group. The question about the Follow app, right? What would you like to see as a parent or a caregiver on the Follow app, which hasn't been updated in quite some time, according to him. So I'm going to post that in the Facebook group and get your take on it. And then I can send him all of our suggestions, because it would really be nice as the caregiver to know things like when you have to calibrate if you're on an older sensor, or when the sensor is getting close to dying, when the transmitter is getting close to dying, that kind of thing. It'd be nice to know on the Follow app, among many other things. I was glad to hear him say that the recycling is something they're thinking of putting together, because it's just all a waste right now. I feel like we have so much diabetes garbage. And I'll be honest with you, I think you can probably hear it in my voice. It's a little odd, it's a little awkward, that's a better word, to ask the CEO of the company how to hack the system. And as he said, he wouldn't tell me even if he knew. So I'll continue to give you information as it comes across my desk in terms of what people are doing to, extend the life of the G6 or, whatever it is. Because I ask him those questions because we all want to know, right? I mean, I'm lying if I say I don't want to know either. But of course I want to know. But what is he going to say? Also on the flip side, I almost brought this up during the interview, but I just didn't want to waste time on it. Animas went out of business. The people who made the Cosmo pump went out of business because they weren't making money. So if a sensor is going to last forever, they're going to lose money on that. And I know, right? They can make enough money. Hopefully they get reimbursed by insurance. We all know that as people with diabetes and people who love people with diabetes, we're all spending too much money on this stuff. But for these businesses to succeed, they've got to make money. So it's a balance and, easy for me to say, someone who has insurance that covers this stuff. So again, we'll continue to visit the issue. I did say I'd give a quick review of the G6, Benny's use of it. We do love it. It's really a nice system. It's a very, very easy inserter. It's compact. He does it all himself now, and he did it himself with the other inserter. But this is, he can stick it on his arm. No problem, no door jam needed. And I think if we had had it from the beginning, the whole thing would have been much less stressful all around. So the inserter's great, much less pain, if any at all. The adhesive seems to work fine for him. So far, all the sensors have fallen off on day 10. And he is, don't tell him I told you, he's a sweaty, active kid. He's not somebody that sensors stay on for 3 weeks, ever. Tape doesn't stay on him well. You can email me your suggestions, but we've tried it all. Just skin tack and the sensor itself usually works out for 10 to 14 days. And, so we're very happy with it. To us, the trade-off of no finger sticks is absolutely amazing. And I'm going to follow up with Tandem. As you know, Benny uses a Tandem pump, and he's not going to want to go back to the G5. I can tell you that right now. And so if the predictive low glucose Suspend comes out, only G5, that's going to be a struggle in my house. And I know it's not just about us, but I want to let you know that I have a vested interest in finding out more about that. So I'll contact Tandem and keep you posted. In our Know Better segment this week, an announcement about stem cell research from insulin maker Novo Nordisk. Know Better is brought to you by Know Better Foods. They produce delicious, nutritionally superior, natural, non-GMO, grain, gluten-free, and exceedingly low glycemic index alternatives to traditional grain-based foods. So eat your bread slices and your waffles and your muffins and your cookies and your croutons and pancakes and be grain and gluten-free. I eat these products. I find the Know Better cookie travels really well. I freeze a lot of this stuff and then I'll throw it in my bag. And, if I'm on an airplane where they're only serving cookies or things that have gluten in them, I can have my no food cookie and feel good about it. I'm gluten-free. I have been since the fall. I don't have celiac, but my doctor asked me for various health reasons to give it a try. It's really helped me, and No Foods has been there every step of the way, and I'm really thankful for that. Their chocolate chip waffles are delish. And I also really enjoy their little mini muffins. Check them out at diabetes-connections.com. Click on the No Foods logo, and you can always save on every order with the promo code Stacey10. Novo Nordisk announcing that it has made major progress in stem cell research. Now, Novo has been working with the University of California, San Francisco. Novo Nordisk is actually based in Copenhagen, in Denmark, but they've been working with UCSF for a while. And they say now that they've made big progress with the development of human embryonic stem cell lines. Interestingly, just a few weeks ago, back in April, Eli Lilly, another insulin maker, announced that they were partnering with Sigilon Therapeutics to develop encapsulated cell therapies for the potential treatment of type 1 diabetes. The Novo announcement doesn't appear to be about a new collaboration. It just appears to be progress on the previous one. So they say they're going to continue to work together with USCF on certain cell lines. Apparently, Novo's been working on this for about 20 years to produce insulin-producing beta cells, but they say they now have preclinical proof of concept. They have worked with Cornell University to create an encapsulation device. This is the thing that actually protects the beta cells, because what happens a lot of time is they'll put the beta cells into somebody, it works great, but then that person's immune system destroys the beta cells, just like they destroyed the beta cells originally, the insulin-producing cells. I'm going to put links in the show notes. This is kind of complicated for me, a layperson, to try to explain the encapsulation process, but I think this is good news. Novo says first clinical trial could be initiated within the next couple of years. Sema Therapeutics, another company that is pursuing stem cell therapy for type 1 diabetes. Now, the little cynic in the back of my brain says that Novo released this because of Lilly's announcement that they were entering this market as well, a global, partnership with Sigilon. So I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but more research is a good thing. I'll link it up. You can decide for yourself, but very interesting as we see a couple of the big insulin makers moving into what many people would consider if not a biological cure for type 1, pretty close to it. If encapsulation works the way that many people hope it will, it could be a pretty amazing thing. And now you know better. In our community connection this week, a story that made headlines several years ago in the North Carolina area. The death of Reegan Oxidine, a toddler from undiagnosed type 1 diabetes, was not the story that made the headlines. It was her family's reaction and push to change laws around here. And they did it. They passed Reegan's Rule. This is a bill that would promote diabetes screening for infants and toddlers and give parents more education about type 1 diabetes. It was a tough fight in the legislature, as you can imagine. It really had no lobbying group. It wasn't something that they could easily attach to another bill that would slide right through. And initially, it was a law that would have mandated that pediatricians do this. It, unfortunately, from where I sit, got watered down to kind of encourage medical professionals to educate parents of children under 5 at well visits about the symptoms and risks of type 1 diabetes. But in and of itself, the process was a victory. The story, however, is an all-around tragedy. This little girl, 16 months old, Reegan Oxidine, she died from undiagnosed type 1 diabetes. And her story continues to be told. Beyond Type 1 has a website and a multimedia campaign now called Previously Healthy, in which Michelle Boise went to the Oxidine's hometown and interviewed them and friends and family and doctors, and put together a story, a document about what happened. I'll let her take it from here and tell us more. Of course, the story itself will be linked up in the show notes and at diabetes-connections.com. But here's my talk with Michelle Boise. Michelle, thanks for joining me to talk about this. It's such a sad story, but such an important issue, and this family is so inspiring. I appreciate you spending some time with me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for talking with me.
Let me ask you first, if I could, why now? Why 3 years after the legislation are you and Beyond Type 1? You put together this beautiful website, this heartbreaking story, but why now?
I think because the problem is still persisting. We still are hearing about people, both adults and children, dying from undiagnosed type 1. We recently covered a story of a former Facebook engineer, Michael Cohen, who passed away just last year, and then the twin from Missouri, who also passed away last year as well. So there's just been cases that keep happening of kids and adults who don't get the care that they need because the warning signs of type 1 are missed. And so we thought, Reegan's story, although she passed in 2013, September 30th, 2013, 5 years ago, we think it's still relevant because not enough is being done, and it's still happening.
Yeah, and I was in reading your story, and I think I'd heard this before, but I could never believe when I read it that something like 40% of people who are diagnosed with diabetes are diagnosed while they're in DKA. Is that right?
It's a pretty shocking statistic. That's a lot of people. I mean, we have done polls in our app and asked people if they were in DKA when they were diagnosed, and it's just overwhelming the amount of people that we heard saying that, they were really sick by the time they figured out what it was, and that the diagnosis was a complete surprise. And, a lot of people talk about nearly dying, and as you know, type 1 is treatable.
I'm always amazed. We were so fortunate. My perspective is one of a parent that was very lucky. My son was diagnosed before, I don't even think he had large ketones. We were just very, very lucky. And when I hear these stories of doctors who kind of said, well, it's the flu, or they send you home, I'm always amazed. So when you went down to Reegan's home to meet with her family, to talk with her doctors, can you tell us a little bit about what struck you right off the bat? I mean, how are they doing?
Well, I think, as one might suspect, you don't get over losing a child to an extent that it is always a tragedy. And I think despite that, the Oxendine family and the people in this community are still advocates to help spread those warning signs. And I think it's testament to this by talking to us at Beyond Type 1. Even 4 years after her passing, they wanted to tell her story and have it reach the biggest audience possible to help spread awareness and to prevent other deaths. So I think what we found was that these people were still very affected by the loss of Reegan Oxendine at 16 months old, and were very willing to help and to make sure that the story was told and that we knew everything.
You talked to a lot of doctors as well for this multimedia article. Do you get the impression that many of them would like to do more, and that there's just maybe an education problem, or is it really about cost? Why don't they check every kid?
Well, I think cost could be part of it in terms of insurance coverage of certain supplies, but the actual cost of a blood glucose check is not that high, right? I think part of it might be liability. When we spoke to House Representative Charles Graham, he talked about the liability issue. Reegan's rule was written with the intention that there were mandatory checks of blood sugar at wellness visits for children 1 through 6. And, the legislators absolutely did not support that. There was a lot of, I don't know what you'd say, discomfort.
Yeah, I remember that.
About that language. And so what they did was they changed the language and they softened that, and saying that it was suggested that they educate parents about the warning signs of type 1. And so they thought, okay, it's not what we originally intended, but it's at least a step in the direction of putting those warning signs out there, of making some noise, of encouraging physicians to speak with parents about what those are. And so it puts type 1 diabetes on the radar. And especially in that age group, that age group was targeted specifically since we have like 18,000 children are diagnosed with type 1 annually in the U.S. So that group, though, was targeted specifically because they're more vulnerable in the sense they can't communicate, or my vision is blurry.
Right.
So it seemed crucial that this age group was targeted. And again, Reegan was 16 months old when she passed. And it was soon after her wellness that her blood glucose level began to be elevated, which we saw from the medical records from UNC Chapel Hill. So it was around that wellness visit that her blood sugar began to rise.
Yeah. And when you talk to her grandfather, he's very frank about it. We trust doctors. We need them to tell us what's going on. And at her well visits, if they had just checked her blood sugar, who knows?
Yeah, I think that, you should be doing blood work more often. And I think you can also check for ketones with a urine stick. And I think that the more analysis done, the better. But I think also that it's important that, that the warning signs are on the radar, that there is better education around what those look like. And the difficulty with type 1 and DKA is that they look very similar to the flu or a viral infection. And so we just need, better education. I think Reegan's role is a step in that direction of putting it on the radar of physicians as well as parents.
I mean, and that's true because while, as you mentioned, the final language of the bill wasn't, you must check, it was the first time a state legislature had voted anything like this through. Right. So other states kind of modeled after that or have moved it forward. So it was an important step forward. I don't think that while many of us, I'm in North Carolina, I remember while this was going on, we were pretty disappointed. But at the same time, it really is the first time anything like this made it that far at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's first of its kind, in terms of diabetes legislation. And Pennsylvania modeled after it. So did California. And so I think, it's a step in the right direction of simply spreading awareness.
Did anything surprise you? I mean, I'm not sure what you thought you would find when you went down, to their hometown. But I'm curious if anything really took you, you found anything unexpected.
Maybe something that was surprising was just the sadness of family and friends or those who were close to the family or who were even had type 2 diabetes that said, I just can't believe that we missed the warning signs. And it just seems tragic, right? When you have a community look back and say, oh, she did have a fruity breath and she was drinking a lot and she did lose a lot of weight. And I know that, we expect that our physicians are able to tell. But I think really working together with physicians and educating entire communities, whether that's teachers or babysitters or parents, that we're more likely to catch these symptoms.
I was really struck by, there are several people you spoke to, but Miss Libby, who is a daycare provider who watched Reegan as a baby, and how now she talks to parents. If anybody's thirsty, if anybody shows any signs, she talks to parents and makes sure that they know and they get better educated. I mean, it's so sad to read her words, but it is also pretty inspiring to see what she is trying to do now.
Absolutely. And you know what? That's advocacy, right? I mean, that's taking information and saying, I want to invoke change. And I think that's really the idea behind Fiercely Healthy, is that if you read this and if you feel empowered to do something, share it with people and talk about those warning signs. Whether you're getting your hair done at the hairdresser or at the gym, share that information. And I think the more that we share those warning signs, the higher the likelihood that a diagnosis is caught in time, that we don't have a tragic death like Reegan's.
So previously healthy.org is the website that is hosting this multimedia presentation, your article, the pictures, there's audio here. This is a huge project. It tells the story for our community, people who have type 1 or even type 2 or who are touched by diabetes. But it's also really accessible, if that's the right word for such a somber story, to people. You can forward this to someone who knows nothing about diabetes and they'll understand when they're done. And I think that, we need more of that. We need to start reaching out to people outside of our community and saying, no, this is the story. This could change your life, your child's life, your adult child's life. You need to send this along. I'm wondering if there's any plan. I don't know how much you can give away, Michelle. I know you're not the PR poobah of Beyond Type 1, but I wonder if there's any plan to really try to push this out into more mainstream media, because I think it deserves to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I think CEO Sarah Lucas of Beyond Type 1 said we need to stop talking to ourselves. Everyone in the DOC knows there's that DKA problem, and we need to start talking to people outside of our community. yeah, that's the hope. And I think mainstream media, sure, we'd love for this to get picked up and shared elsewhere. And the more shares and the more people it reaches, the better for the cause, right?
Oh, yeah.
So yes, let me know who you know and would like to share this.
No, it's great. I do hope it gets more attention because it can only help educate, as you said, and if more people know the signs, especially those little kids. I mean, when my son was diagnosed, he couldn't even say diabetes. He was so little, and we never knew, how do you feel, and we knew he was thirsty, and we knew he felt bad, but other than that, they cannot communicate. The Oxidines, I meant to ask you, the Oxidines also have a son. I honestly, I didn't realize that until I read your article. Can you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, for sure. So he is 13 currently. He was a young boy when Reegan passed, and he was obviously very affected by the loss of his little sister and participated in the fundraisers that the family had, and they had these Winky shirts and the advocacy efforts of his parents. He was very well written and had become an activist himself. And I think it goes to show that it's an entire family that's affected from this kind of tragedy, and at any age within the family. And then, with Miss Libby and her testimony, it's a whole community that is hurt by something like this being missed. So yeah, it was a real privilege to get to talk to her sibling and to everyone really in the community, aunts and uncles and grandparents. So
I'm just curious, the story really isn't about this, but I'm curious, in the few days that this has been out, what's the reaction been? I've seen it all over social media. Have people? As I said in the beginning, it's such a somber story. I'm curious if people are reaching out to you to say say you enjoyed reading it or you're glad it was written. It's tough to say, but it's kind of how I felt about it, because I'm just glad these stories are being told. I'm wondering if anybody else has reacted that way.
So I think the sharing and the digesting of the piece is going to take time, and we're going to see, in the following months where that will go and what audiences we're able to reach with that messaging. But yeah, it's a tragedy. It's a sad story. So I think in that vein, it's something that, you have to prepare yourself for. And we're just hopeful that despite the sadness, that people will find it compelling and important enough to share.
Well, thank you for sharing some time with me. I appreciate it. And keep us posted on the reaction and, if you do more with this. So thanks, Michelle. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And of course, lots more information about the Oxidine family, about Reegan's rule, about what you can do if you'd like to get involved. I contacted Beyond Type 1 and we got the DKA campaign that they do. They do a great job of giving you materials to send to your pediatrician. Well, actually, they give you materials so you send to every pediatrician in the state. It's quite a project. But I had a bunch of diabetes moms over and we got it out. It's an amazing campaign that Beyond Type 1 is doing, and I'm thrilled to have been a tiny little part of it. But I'll put that information in the show notes as well, because, as I said to Michelle, I was disappointed at the time, and I continue to be disappointed that local media here in North Carolina didn't do more with this. This was a big story, and this was a health story that didn't get much coverage. So I applaud them for trying to get more attention for this. Maybe it didn't happen here in North Carolina. Maybe it'll happen on the national level. So if you'd like to learn more about Reegan's rule or get involved in the Beyond Type 1 campaign, I'll link all that up in the show notes. Quick look at the calendar, not so much for events or where I'll be, which are always in the show notes, but just to say, holy cow, coming up on Memorial Day. Summer is almost here. My kids get out of school tomorrow as this episode is released. Yeah, we finish before Memorial Day down here. Oh my gosh. So happy summer to those of you who are on the brink, and may we remember those who served our country as we are allowed to celebrate on Memorial Day. So let's keep that in mind as well. And as we look forward, the summer really is going to be busy. I'll keep you posted here as to where I am and what's going on, but stay with me, episodes every Tuesday. But we're doing a lot of traveling. I might be doing some from my mom's closet again or in the car. I'll let you know. what's going on. But Diabetes Camp is coming up. Friends for Life is coming up. And in June, we're going to start talking about that show from Friends for Life, the big diabetes family conference that happens in July, because you can take part. We're going to be giving out prizes and things like that. It's going to be a lot of fun. So stay tuned for that. Please join the Facebook group. That's where most of these announcements are made first. So you will find it there. And of course, thanks to Facebook's lovely algorithm, half the stuff I post to the page, you probably don't even see. If you're in the group, you guarantee to see it all. Big thanks to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Wherever I am, in the closet or the car, he makes it sound terrific. So thank you, John, for that. Very much appreciated. And thank you for listening. What a thrill to do this show every week. What a privilege. I know I say that quite often. I really do mean it. Thank you so much for listening and for joining me. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here next week.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.